and what can we expect when we're having one. And our experts tonight are CATERING Glover. She is the community advisor at MS Auckland, and also the invisible Fiona Young. And she is gonna explain us the process, and it's gonna make it easier to understand. Thank you very much.
Sorry for my invisibility, everybody. My Zoom screen has turned into an Andy Warhol migraine-inducing disaster. So I know that you know that I'm all so beautiful like Kate Moss, that you were so sad you can't see me. But I assure you, we'll be fine with just my slides. Catherine, do you want to start things off? What would you want me to kick off?
No, it's just Fiona will take us on a virtual walk through the infusion process. Let's take a walk on the wild side, take it from a walk on the wild side to a walk in the park. I'll hand it over to clinical nurse specialist Fiona.
Thanks, hooray. Hey, I'm so excited, and thank you, MS Auckland, for gathering so many people to come and have a look and listen at this, because it's a really big deal, isn't it? The idea of actually, you might want to flip back a few slides, starting in medicine. You know, for some people, that is what they've been hankering to do from the moment they had been given a diagnosis. For some people, it's such a massive decision. In fact, it's always a massive decision, to be honest, but it's the weighing of the pros and cons and feeling confident about your decision, feeling at the center of the wheel, that you're the person receiving the right information from the right people at the right time. So you can make a really informed decision about what's best for you and your whānau and your health. So with Catherine's great suggestion, actually, to try and demystify some of this. I think at the hospital we take it a little bit for granted that people have even been there before, and that's certainly not the case. Do you agree, Catherine? That's what we find. People are keyed up and nervous, right?
Yep, that white coat anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So this is an awesome opportunity for us to be able to sort of demystify that. So there's lots of sort of things people take for granted about the hospital that you perhaps may or may not know. And we thought initially just some really useful day-to-day sort of information might be helpful for you to know. And so we'll be talking about the length of the infusions, where to come, some really basic things. So if we flick to that next slide, you know, depending on what treatment you're taking, you will be with us for variable lengths of time. We've got a 6-bedded infusion unit, and some of you glorious people who have logged in have used this unit before and know what I'm talking about. It is quite pretty. It's got a nice view of the domain, which is quite calming. My office has a view of the car park, so you win. And we have a smaller room with 2 beds and a larger room with 2 beds and about 3 or 4 sort of lazy boy style chairs. We've got 2 infusion nurses who work largely full-time. They're reasonably new to our unit. One's been with us for about 3 months. One's been with us for about 12 months. And we think we've finally hit on a real great combination. We used to have 2 amazing nurses who've retired and moved on to other roles, and it's really been hard to replicate the dream team. But when you come in, you may well be in a room with other people. Some of these people will be taking the same treatment as you. Some of them will be taking blood products for different neurological conditions, so something entirely different. But I tell you what, 9.5 times out of 10, they're very friendly, engaging people. So if you're up for a chat or you are kind of curious about your new treatment, you'll certainly find someone who can talk you through their experience. That said, if you're feeling like you need some quiet time, you know, feel free to pull that not very soundproof, not very fashionable hospital curtain around you and take some time out. We do have Wi-Fi, so there's unfortunately no excuse if you've got work to do. You can work remotely from the hospital. If you're with us for a longer infusion, you may want to bring a laptop and a movie or a book or a husband, wife, partner, something to do. It can be a bit dull and boring. We do have tea, coffee and water facilities. I must remind you that our coffee is amazing. It's powdered Nescafe and just so delicious. So you may want to purchase a nicer brand of coffee from the cafes downstairs. We are actually thinking about getting a tea and coffee trolley, a little bit like that program from the 80s, Gliding On, where we have biscuits and tea to give out, but to be confirmed. Unfortunately, our parking is extortionate, and we aren't able to subsidise that at the moment. If you have a disability parking card, you can certainly find parks that will potentially get you parked more quickly. But that said, it is a really busy hospital, so you may be driving up a few floors of the car park building to visit us. I also mention my last point. We have some people who will have a pre-medicine for their MS treatment, but also another treatment that can cause some deep breathing, at sort of potentially a slight bit of mild snoring in some people. So you may think that earplugs may be something for you, or listening to some music. Those are all things that might help your infusion experience. So one other really key thing to mention, and one of our infusion VIPs did mention, bring slip-on shoes so you can kick them off, but you have something to wear when you're going to the bathroom. There's a bathroom attached to our infusion room, and it's cleaned very regularly, but if you treat it like you're on an airplane, I think, or a hotel room, I think that's the best way to treat it. Have some slip-on shoes and pop them on before you use the bathroom. Yeah, I think that probably covers the real basics on that one. Kath, do you think that I've missed anything significant?
No, I think that's great. Just the only thing is limit your cell phone calls and everything. Other people don't want to hear
your business calls.
Yeah.
We love you being businessy, but
yes.
just I did really need to add in the key importance of our hospital catering.
No.
And as you can see, actually, I don't know who half of these famous chefs are, but we don't have any of them working at the hospital, none of them at all. And so please don't expect to have some sort of, sorry, my dog's coming in. Please don't expect a gastronomical experience, but if you're here for a longer infusion, we will most certainly provide you with some nourishment. So anybody who's here for 4 or 5, 6 hours, we will give you a delicious hospital lunch that looks a bit like the packed lunch you might pack for your children. Banana and an apple and maybe a tuna on rye sandwich and a little orange juice like you get on an airplane. So you may read that as code for bring your own lunch, but you know, we'll let you see. We'll wait with bated breath on your feedback about our catering. And largely bringing your patients with you. We certainly do our best. Our infusion nurses are so amazing at getting your IV access sorted and your IV line in, and setting you up. We do have a checklist that we need to go through before each infusion, and we do have some people who haven't really given themselves enough time. Perhaps they've lined up 3 things in a day, and you know, it's a busy service. If someone else is late, it does have an impact on other people's infusions. So you're using a public health system that does its super duper very best to be slick, but bring your patients. It's just like someone doing loud business calls, just thinking of other people, and some deep breaths of things are taking a little bit of time. I thought it might be worthwhile talking to you about IV lines. I don't know, you know, some of you may have had IV access before for various reasons, but some people maybe haven't, and that can be quite a nerve-wracking thing, you know, the idea or the fear of the unknown the night before, not knowing what your going to experience as far as us accessing your veins. Anybody taking these treatments has bravely signed up for something that has IV at the front of it. So we love you to be well hydrated. The more fluid you have on, the easier it is for us to palpate your veins. And we will put an IV line, it's actually just a tiny plastic tube that sits inside your veins. And we'll either put that on the top of your hand, on the thumb side of your wrist, or in your antecubital fossa, which is the inside of your elbow. And if my video was working now, you would see me gesticulating like a mad woman, showing you my elbow. We do have, for some people who really like it, a cream that you can put on before your infusion that makes the top of the skin a little bit numb, which can be really helpful, because the last thing our nurses, Mickey and Paula, want is you pulling your hand back and flinching, as we all want to, because who really wants a small needle put into their arm? But if there is lots of movement, you may have a bruise in the area, and some people just bruise easily anyway. You'll see an amazing spelling mistake that I've been trying all day to correct down the bottom of this slide. It's not that I can't read, it's just that it's my day off and my computer has been very mean to me today. We do have the occasional person whose veins are either very deep lying or hard to feel and see. So we do occasionally link in with our anaesthetics team. They're on the same level 8 at Auckland Hospital, and they can come across and help us out. They use an ultrasound and they can, it's like having X-ray vision into someone's veins. It's amazing. So on my next slide, there's some actual pictures of where we may put your IV lines in. So you'll see the top right. They call that the houseman's vein, because all of the house officers, when they're training, find that, you know, when you get your blood taken at the phlebotomist as well, it's great for a TYSABRI infusion. But if you're having an OCREVUS infusion, it can just, you know, it's a pain in the bum really. If you try and read your book or move your arm, it can occlude the flow. So for longer infusions, you might be looking at more of the picture on the other side, where someone's wearing a very fashionable blue gown, and you can see the lines on the top of their hand. That doesn't actually hurt more. A lot of people think it does. And lots of us have tougher skin on our hands because of sunshine and gardening and whatever. So it's actually a great one and quite comfortable. I'm very happy for any experienced people who have joined us today who have infusions to tell me something different at any stage as we go through. So I thought I'd quickly just touch on the 2 treatments. We've got another webinar that lives on the MS Auckland website. So other content that has got our MS neurologist, Jennifer Pereira, talking about in depth the way these treatments work. So I won't go in depth into these at all tonight, because there's other ways and other very, very clever people speaking about this. But I will give you a quick whip through of how these work, side effects, and what to expect. So natalizumab, these are both monoclonal antibodies, and this is my only sciencey slide. What we have is T cells that are able to squeeze through the blood-brain barrier and come into our brain and spine, causing an MS relapse. And with natalizumab or TYSABRI, you'll see the little, I guess they look like Ys, don't they? But they're binding on to the T cells, and actually they are no longer able to fit through. So TYSABRI is working outside of your brain and spine to protect you from further MS relapses, which is marvelous. It's something that on a day-to-day, month-to-month basis almost feels like we're injecting watermelon sugar, which I can't help but say, because I just chased my 13-year-old off to see Harry Styles. And if you looked at me right now, I'm covered in purple feather boa feathers that have dropped everywhere. So TYSABRI, when it's given, doesn't really feel like you're having a treatment. It feels, people tell us it's like having water or, you know, juice, nothing instantaneous side effect wise. It's something that means you can drive home afterwards, you can go to work afterwards, operate heavy machinery. There's no issues with your capacity. I've known probably about 4 or 5 people of the couple of hundred we've treated to feel fatigued and want to, well, more fatigued than they would expect to be. You know, perhaps they go home and sleep for the afternoon, and that's really rare, to be honest. We don't see that often. On the whole, we give this treatment every 6 weeks, and we want to put you through the MRI machine every 12 months to check that the medicine's working, and also to screen for one of the major side effects that we know can affect people taking TYSABRI, but is incredibly rare, which is something that if you're starting this treatment, we will have talked to you about. It's called progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy. And because that is such a massive mouthful, we just shorten that down to PML. So we scan in the MRI machine every 12 months to look for any signs of new MS lesions or any signs of PML. We want to allocate 92 hours really, 2 hours for your first 3 visits, because we want to observe you to make sure you don't grow another arm or a unicorn horn. We don't actually expect that. We do just want to make sure that people don't feel itchy or unwell or have an unusual side effect. Anyone at all having any sort of infusion can have an mild allergic side effect, in 2 to 4% cases, which is so unlikely. So, you know, in 96 to 98% of the time, you're not going to have any side effects, but we do get you for an extra hour for the first 3 visits. After that, you're looking at a 90-minute turnaround, coming in, having your blood pressure and pulse taken, filling in a questionnaire about your last 6 weeks that help us work out that you're healthy and well and ready to take your medicine, having your IV line inserted, the medicine dripping through, and then we give you 20 ml of saline through the IV line as a flush. So that all takes about 90 minutes. We do repeat blood tests every 6 months. That's a liver function test to check that your liver is happy with its breaking down of a new medicine. And we also repeat your DayC virus blood test. And we would have taken a DayC virus blood test before you started treatment in the first place. We want to monitor that that doesn't jump up into a very strongly positive result. And if in fact that does happen, which again is really unlikely, we will want to talk to you about next steps and whether or not we keep using that treatment or look at other options. So people with a strongly positive JC virus result have a greater risk of developing the PML side effect that we talked about. Catherine, is there anything else, if you're still there, that you would like me to touch on about TYSABRI before we move on to talking about OCREVUS? No?
No. I think you've covered everything, Fiona.
Brilliant. So our other option is, and have you noticed that all of these are front pages of the pharmaceutical patient information booklets, but they're just so marketing, aren't they? Everyone's smiling and grinning in a swimming pool. So OCREVUS is the 6-monthly infusion. It's manufactured by Roche, and for us it's been amazing insofar as it became available quite some years actually after TYSABRI. So TYSABRI came in 2014, and we've only had OCREVUS since about 2018 or 19, I think. And the JC virus result, it doesn't have an impact on this treatment. So if you're strongly JC positive, we would suggest this is the treatment for you. I mean, there are oral tablets that are also great treatments, but the 2 IV treatments are stronger, and your neurologist will give you a really good guide if they think a stronger treatment is one for you. So this is great in many ways. It's a 6-monthly infusion. You don't have to come and see us every 6 weeks. You don't have to pay for your parking quite as often, but when you do, it is for obviously a bit longer. The treatment itself is much longer. The first treatment is split into 2 visits, and we probably have you 3 or 4 hours for each of the first 2 visits. And we basically split the dose because the drug company tell us it's safer to introduce you to the medicine slowly. And that helps any allergic reactions as well. We give you a pre-medicine that can make you feel a bit dozy. So we do ask that you have a chauffeur who can come and pick you up and drop you off. And I was looking for all sorts of pictures of chauffeurs to add to this, but I just kept coming up with driving Miss Daisy. So we give you some methylprednisolone, which is IV 100 milligrams of IV steroids. We also give you the antihistamine, which makes you sleepy. And that takes about 30 minutes. After that, we then start on the main meal, the main event, which is your infusion. And for those first 2 visits, you're there probably from about 7:30 till 11:30 midday. Once you've got the first sort of meeting with the OCREVUS out of the way, and you come back 6 months later, you will be there for a longer visit, more like 6 hours, 7:30 till, I don't know, 2, 3 o'clock. That's the time where often people just do feel like they're nodding off to sleep because of the sort of doziness. But again, that's a very key time to have some form of entertainment with you. We'll again pop you in the MRI machine once a year to check on the effectiveness of the treatment. There is no relation to PML, the side effect that has caused problems with TYSABRI, which is great. You know, it's been a treatment that's really opened up treatment options for people who are JC positive. We get you to see your neurologist every year, as we do when you're on TYSABRI. Ideally, that would be on a 6-month basis, but at the moment, well, actually, over time, we found that isn't necessary. Once you've just started on a treatment, though, it can be very reassuring to link in with your neurologist at least 6 months afterwards. So we do try and aim for that. And on the whole, I've found people have been really happy with this treatment. You know, I think it's helpful if you are about to look at these treatments to talk to MS Auckland and their peer support team, because there are some people who've been on the treatments who can talk to you about their experience. I tend to recommend the peer support people so much more than I would recommend you getting on a chat room to talk about OCREVUS or TYSABRI. I just feel from talking to patients who've used these chat rooms, they're often quite negative. People, human nature is such that we talk about the negative, and the people who've had a good experience aren't on those chat rooms sometimes. But we want to give you an honest idea of what you're getting yourself in for. As Catherine was saying, we want this to be something that is smooth, not walking on the wild side. So I think getting as much information as you can is important. I'm really happy to tour you around the infusion rooms, and I do every time I get an opportunity, and to introduce you to the infusion nurses, just so you get a sense of where you're coming and where you're at. And just a quick note to say this treatment works differently to TYSABRI. TYSABRI is a T-cell mediated treatment, whereas OCREVUS, can you pop on my next slide, please, Catherine? OCREVUS is not at all Donald Trump, but I use him in my explanation by saying B cells are a little bit like Donald Trump at the inciting a riot. So the B cells kind of nudge the T cells and say, hey, shall we cross the blood-brain barrier? And why don't you cross the blood-brain barrier and cause a relapse? So what we're doing with OCREVUS and B cells, so the OCREVUS is suppressing B cell activity. So the B cells then can't nudge the T cells, who in their turn go across and cause an MS relapse. So that's my very basic way of explaining that. It's always quite alarming having a picture of Trump popping up. So we'll move on from that slide so as not to terrify you. I guess once you're up and running with your infusion, it's quite important for you to know what happens next. So when you come in, you will be booked in to have your appointments. Usually we'll put you in touch via email with our infusion nurses. That's their email address there. And it would be probably great if you want to scratch that down. We are getting some business cards printed up for them, and it's also their mobile number. Alongside this webinar, we've been working at the hospital to try and give more information as well. So a little brochure booklet will be coming out, and it will have the contact details. We'll have some photos of our staff and instructions on where to come. And it's just much more helpful for you to email or call them directly rather than talking to myself or Nazila, because they're right there in the infusion unit. And if you are running late, or if you need to switch your infusion because of, I don't know, a sick child or a work commitment, they can do that in real time for you. They are busy usually all day up till about 2:30 doing infusions. So if you, they will look at your, they'll glance through emails and certainly clock if you aren't able to attend. But if you are requesting a change of appointment, you may not get a reply for them to have worked that out till about 2 or 3 p.m. They will definitely get back to you. And if it's an urgent query, I'd use that mobile number. For anybody wanting to travel, I think it's important for you to know that you can stretch your infusions from 6 weeks of TYSABRI to 8 weeks. It's not ideally safe to go any longer than 8 weeks, because then you're at the risk of your T cells T cells moving back into your immune system, and you're potentially more at risk of an MS relapse. We've had the odd person who's popped off to the UK and haven't sort of mentioned that they were leaving to us, and we've always been a bit sort of perturbed when they don't turn up for their infusion and sort of come in at week 9 or 10, and we sort of are alarmed. So talk to us about your travel plans. I spent time last week talking to one of our lovely patients about his 6-week trip around Europe and Disneyland and in Paris, and how we would sort of plan his infusion. And it may be that we need to move your infusions from, slightly change change from perhaps 6 weeks to 5 to, to get your dates sorted for your holiday. With OCREVUS, if you're wanting to travel, you've obviously got a lot more room to do that. You've got 6 months and then some, to be honest. That treatment will last, in many people, up to 8 or 9 months. And it's quite easy for us to assess if it's still working. We will be able to do a blood test called a B cell marker. And the B cell marker tells us if the OCREVUS is still suppressing your B cells. And if your B cells are at a certain level, which is usually almost nothing, we know that you are safe from an MS relapse. And when we see them repopulating, we know that it's time to top you up with the treatment. So I was speaking to a gentleman the other day who's wanting to go to the UK to visit his elderly mother. And his concern was perhaps if she were to get unwell and he needed to stay longer, what would his options be? So there's always that potential for us to be able to extend your infusion on OCREVUS to that little bit longer if required. So that's all I've prepared. There are some things to consider though, and Kath, if you can just click the buttons, they should pop up there. Yeah, if you're unwell, obviously, perhaps get in touch. In fact, definitely get in touch and don't come in. If you've got a cold, a flu, or a bladder infection, a chest infection, anything that's popping your internal body temperature up, we need when we do your blood pressure and temperature, everything to be stable. So we would just say, if you're on antibiotics or you're feeling unwell, finish the course and then we'll book you in to get your infusion. Your flexibility around booking dates and times is so greatly appreciated. 7:30 on a Friday morning is everyone's favourite time to come in, and it's impossible. This is not enough room to fit everybody in. So, we've got about 350 people that we need to sort of schedule in for infusions. You will find that anytime after 12 p.m. is a lot more quiet. So if you do have flexibility, it's greatly appreciated. It is difficult to meet everyone's expectations. There's been a lot of chat about late night infusions, just like late night shopping or Saturday mornings. We haven't quite got there yet, but in the future it may be something we're better able to accommodate. And we really do want to provide a service that is good for you. I always think hospitals are designed to suit the staff, and that's so dumb. So we are working towards making the best service we can for you. And yeah, that last question really echoes the idea of not doing massive business deals loudly on your phone. Yeah, so I hope that's been of some help to you. Really happy to take your questions. I'm so sorry about my IT drama at this end. Yeah, we got any questions popping up, Catherine?
Lemonita, have you got any?
Oh, wow, how about that? I'll take that as a sign that I've really nailed it. I would.
Okay, I've got one. One's coming. Is the process similar in other centres?
The processes in hi Stephen. The process in other centres.
The process of the infusion.
Yeah, so the way that infusion is given should be the same anywhere you go. And actually, that's an interesting point, Catherine. There's so many people moving around Auckland and out, and mostly out, but there are people moving up as well. Up and down the country, we've got a really tight community of neurologists and MS nurses. So we've had someone move to Invercargill recently who is getting their infusion very happily. There's infusion units at Dunstan Hospital, I think, Otago, in Dunedin, Christchurch. We can link you in very easily nationally. The process is exactly the same as to how long the infusion takes, but in some places there are slightly different way things are done. I think in Waikato Hospital is a sort of only 2 or 3 days a week they do the infusions, and not everybody is, and sometimes it's a first in, first served as far as times. So each area has its own little foibles, I suppose. But on the whole, the actual process of when you're popping your arm out and having your infusion is exactly the same. Would you like me to look through the questions or from here? So I'll have a look at Stephen's question, if that's okay, Catherine.
Yeah, sure, please.
Cool. Hi, Stephen. Let's have a wee squiz. So what we need to do particularly is perhaps I'll have a chat to you when I'm in later in the week, and I'll have a chat with your neurologist, because that's the sort of thing we get the doctors to talk to together and work out what the priority treatment is and what happens next. So I'm going to make a little note here in my rumpus room, come office, and I will link in with you on that not complicated, but that question later in the week. So I'm working Thursday and Friday this week, so expect to hear from me then. The next question is about Hep B vaccinations, but your doctor won't give it to you until she has a report. That's annoying, isn't it? Okay. So I've had some issues lately. We do, and it's a good point, and I should have perhaps thought about talking about vaccinations. We do ask people, because we do a lot of bloods before infusions, and one of them is to see if people have a natural hepatitis B level of immunity. We do often ask people to head off and get the vaccination. Sometimes I find that is not subsidised, and it drives me crazy, because I don't think people should be needing to pay for unsubsidised vaccination. I'm really, again, happy if you were to get in touch with me to get you that report from your neurologist. I just don't know where else you would go to get the hepatitis B shots other than a travel clinic, and they may well want something from your neurologist as well. I'm not sure if you have had any sort of issues with your GP on this before. Often the practice nurses will give me a call directly and we work this out. So to the nice person who's asked that question, talk to your practice nurse, or perhaps you'll need to email me because I can't see your details on your question. But very happy to help you out with that again later in the week. Sonia's question: we are new at MS, only received a diagnosis last week. What about Middlemore? Yeah, good question, Sonia. And Sonia, can you email me too? Because we'd like to talk to you and give you some support about your diagnosis. We really want to get people off to a flying start, and you to feel really confident. I know, last week's pretty blooming fresh, isn't it? Middlemore and North Shore Hospital and Waitakere don't do any of these infusions at the moment. We're trying so hard to perhaps iron this out, I suppose is the way to describe it. We've had a lot of pushback from all the other hospitals over the years, and it's a huge inconvenience if you live in Pukekohe. From Pukekohe to come all the way into Auckland Hospital for your infusion is crazy. Probably sometime next year, natalizumab, TYSABRI, is going to hopefully be available from Pharmac in a subcut injection form, which is an injection under your skin. That's something that you wouldn't be able to do at home. You'd need to go into a centre to have that done, but we don't know how that will look yet, but it may be that there'll be places like the Manukau Super Clinic, or maybe GP surgeries who will be able to administer that medicine. So for our fabulous people out south, there may be a way that doesn't involve coming all the way, and for people over the bridge as well. Lee, OCREVUS is not a steroid. No, it's a monoclonal antibody. It's a B-cell mediated treatment. We give steroids really only in MS if people are already having a set of symptoms. Both of these IV treatments are to prevent new symptoms happening in the future. It's like an insurance policy in intravenous form. So when you start taking these medicines, you won't magically, unfortunately, see any symptoms you have go away. It's not designed, unfortunately, to do that, but steroids are there to try and help symptoms go away. So the IV treatments, TYSABRI and OCREVUS, are to stop you having treatments and stop you having relapses in the future. Steroids are there if it's already happened. Okay. Sonia, yep, we're definitely going to talk, aren't we? So I think my email address is on the first slide, but it's msnurse@ADHB. In fact, I'll type an answer like a sensible person. Here we go. You send me an email and we will talk about you and your daughter sometime this week. All right, there you go. Rebecca Buxton, how are you? Stand down for vaccines following OCREVUS. Is there a stand down time following a TYSABRI infusion? Actually, it's a pretty ginormous stand down. We don't really like giving vaccinations full stop once you've started on these treatments, which is why we're so keen on getting them done before you start. So live vaccinations, and there's not really many of them, but the MMR, measles, mumps and rubella, that's a vaccination that you can't have at all once you've started on these treatments. So we like to do all those tests and get those vaccinations out of the way pre-treatment. And then the non-live vaccines, so the COVID vaccine is a good example. They just don't really work as well. They don't work as strongly. Your body doesn't raise that response to the vaccination once you're on the treatments. But yeah, you could stand down following OCREVUS. We used to say as far away from your previous OCREVUS infusion as possible, but it really depends on the vaccination. So I'd be talking to my MS nurse or a neurologist to really drill down on that question. Hey, these are really good questions, by the way. I'm quite impressed. I just got an Novavax booster. Hi, Yoga. Should I get the second one before my infusion? We miss you too. I hope things are going well in the Waikato. I don't want to get too involved in that. I think you should talk to Karen, the MS nurse in Waikato, just to be sure. I'm not 100% on Novavax, and even though you can't see me because my video is not working and I could Google that really quickly, it's not a good practice for me to give advice on something I'm not 100% sure on a webinar. So you have a chat to your local team and they will sort that answer out for you. What about flu and COVID vaccines? Hey, that's an excellent question, Rebecca. COVID vaccines are fine with TYSABRI. There is no stand down. You can have them whenever. Flu vaccines for all of you out there, flu vaccinations are fine with all of these treatments. And prior to our charming little pandemic, we always used to say to people, have you thought about having a flu vaccination? Because the one thing we know so much anecdotally about MS and relapses, that stress and car accidents, bereavements, all those things can trigger a relapse. But the science really only substantiates that infections can trigger relapses. So anything you can do to reduce your relapse rate, relapse exposure to a relapse, or anything you can do, to reduce your exposure to an infection that might trigger a relapse is really sensible. So yeah, get your flu vaccination and tell them that you've got MS and you want it subsidized, please. If they give you any hard time, get the practice nurse to give me a call again. Makes me sound quite botty, doesn't it? Sorry about that.
I've got one more here, Fiona.
Yep.
Lady asks, I have a baby. Can I bring baby into infusion with me?
Oh yes, we love a good baby visiting. Absolutely. I think I hope people feel comfortable doing that. So what we'll try and do, if we know that you've got a little one, is pop you in the 2-bedded room so you've got a bit more space for your pram. We have lots of mums on TYSABRI with freshly born babies who will come in. TYSABRI is great for breastfeeding, and we can give you that privacy that you may want. You've got curtains, you've got a chance to have a bit of a new mummy nap. We try and be so flexible over school holidays because I've got young kids and I know how hard it is to juggle things like appointments and preschoolers. It's not an ideal environment for little people who can run around, but if we are really, if you're really, really stuck, we will do our best to try and find you a single room. But definitely a good time to call on grannies, granddads, all whānau to help with some child minding. But yeah, we do what we can, and it's a really family friendly place. So yeah, babies, great.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Let me just check there's not any more excellent questions.
Yeah, there's no more questions.
Oh, I've got one from Lee that I can see that I haven't answered. Does MS increase the risk of long COVID if you get it? Oh. Which is a really good question. I'm not sure if there is enough information out yet internationally, and we were sort of lucky, I say in inverted commas, because we did get to watch the rest of the world get COVID and the rest of the MS world get COVID before it really got to us. There weren't more negative outcomes of people with MS and COVID, and there weren't more negative outcomes of people on the IV infusions and their COVID. So I don't think there's anything significant outside the population of people who don't have MS and the way their COVID behaved. So I guess I'm kind of plumping on the sides of, I don't think so. But Lee, if you want to look further into it, there's an amazing blog site by a guy called Gavin Giovanoni, and it's MS Selfie. And I guarantee, and Catherine's nodding, I guarantee if you Google it up, he will have something about MS and long COVID. He is a prolific blogger and a very, very scientifically amazing person. So you may need some sort of Google Dr. Translate, but the answer will be there. And I will write that one down and have a wee look myself. If you want to pop me an email to remind me, I'll try and find that out for you. I love your questions. They've been so sensible, and there's so many things I should have thought of to add into my slides. I really enjoyed your questions, everybody.
I think there's one more question from Mike. Fiona.
Hi, Mike. Let's have a look. My wife says, I just don't know from your absolutely gorgeous 2-line question. I don't know. Why don't you talk to your GP? So if your GP is seeing a neurologist on a regular basis, they will certainly give her an idea about whether or not these treatments would work for her. They're treatments only, and another thing I should have said in my slides, they're treatments really that are licensed for relapsing remitting MS rather than secondary progressive or primary progressive MS. That's not because Pharmac is just being awful. It's actually because the international trials just didn't prove the treatments worked sufficiently well enough. With the exception of OCREVUS, which is being used for progressive MS in some parts of the world, and we would really like it if Pharmac let us use it here. So it's difficult to say without more information about you and your lovely wife. It's a hard question to answer. So I'd be putting that to the GP and asking them to write to your neurologist, and your neurologist can then have a look through your wife's notes and see whether or not that might be something. We really want anybody who's interested or eligible for these treatments to have the opportunity to find that out. So I'm really pleased you've asked, and I wouldn't want you to think that's a black hole answer. So let's follow that one up and see what we can find out for you and your wife.
Thank you very much, Fiona.
No problem, no problem.
You unveiled the mysteries of infusion.
So it should be a walk in the park. Honestly, it should. My office is 2 doors down, and I'm not in there all the time, largely because I'm a show-off and I talk too much and people just want me to go away, I expect. But I do stick my head in a few times a day and try and touch base with people. I want you to have that chance to ask me questions when you're in for your infusions. And if you haven't seen me when you're there, feel free to ask Mickey or Paula, our lovely infusion nurses. They'll give me a call and I can come through. Otherwise, you know, I'm only an email or a phone call away. So we really want to support you on, you know, on everything MS related. That said, you know, I've got Luminita and Catherine there and the rest of their team to help share that job that they do so well with me. But, you know, getting started and feeling safe on these infusions is a really big deal. And we want to support you on that experience.
Thank you so much, Fiona. It was a very comprehensive presentation, and it's been recorded and it's going to be on our website if people want to revisit the slides and have a look and, yeah, check. And we're very sorry we couldn't see you. Really sorry about that.
No, I think that's my camera doesn't like, I'm not sure if one of my little darling twins has dropped it on the way down the stairs when they've been to do their prodigy online maths homework, but I will get it fixed for the next one. I'm so sorry about that.
Please do. And
all right, good night, everybody.
Thank you everyone for being here. Good night, and keep an eye on INFUSION for the next one. See you.
Bye.
Bye.